friends, and welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
In fact, the 150th episode.
150 episodes. Holy ball sacks. That's a lot of episodes, dude.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot. It's a lot of topics, a lot of subjects.
Sure is.
It's a fun time.
I will say, aside from being the milestone of 150, which I guess is a milestone, it's also the latest we've ever recorded an episode. It is 3:20 a.m. at the time we are beginning this record, so we're going to be slightly loopy, but I think we have good topics to carry us through. Robin didn't introduce us, so I'm Adam Diaz. That's Robin Grace. Robin Grace, what are you going to be covering this week?
I am going to be doing a cryptid. I haven't done one in forever.
So for the record, is it a cryptid or is it a Digimon? Because I got some pictures in my inbox for the Instagram post, and I was kind of confused, so...
It's a cryptid.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Good to know. I'm going to be covering what is known as the Ariel School Encounter, which is something I have been saving for a while and I'm kind of excited for, but I believe Robin is going to be going first this week, so I will let you take it away.
All right, so I'm going to be doing a cryptid. It's episode 150, kind of a big milestone. That's 300 topics, a minimum.
Yeah, I actually put in my script... we've done over 300 topics
because there's some that we do like
2
things in one or 3 things in one.
Yeah, and on top of that, we had an episode 0 where we covered 2 topics each. So
well, we also had like the sneak peek episode of Scene Missing.
That does fill in for that. Well, I didn't count that in the episode though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's just like sneak peek. It wasn't actually counted in our episode numbering, which is why our numbering has changed slightly for like scary or story times, like topic episodes.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, you guys don't pay attention to those probably. I don't know. But since we're doing something big, episode 150, and apparently everything is bigger in Texas, we're going to cover what you could call Texas's own personal Bigfoot.
Interesting.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Okay. I'm trying to think back to the pictures you sent. I'm like, I don't think they look like a Bigfoot, so I'm really interested to hear what you have on this one.
All right. So it's funny because this particular creature was spotted in Tarrant County, which is where I literally went to their community college for school.
Back in the day. Not currently.
Like right out of high school, that's where I went to college. Because I couldn't afford to go to UNT. I got into UNT, couldn't afford it.
University of North Texas?
Yeah. Okay. Couldn't afford it. Way too expensive. So I went to community college instead. It was great.
I got into Notre Dame, and I couldn't afford it because it's incredibly expensive. So that was the one I got into. And I was like, cool, awesome. It's like, oh yeah, poor. So that's not going to work.
So when I saw that this is where it was like seen, I got really excited to cover this because I was just like, oh my god, it's like the area's own little thing. It's so cool. But that's just because there's just this mental relationship with it for me.
You have a connection.
Yeah.
Got it.
All right. So in Lake Worth, it's west of Dallas, just east of Fort Worth. There's a lake, obviously Lake Worth. And in the middle of this lake is a landmass that they call Greer Island.
Interesting, okay.
This is the location of a famed sighting of what is now known as the Lake Worth Monster. You're looking at me like, no, right?
No, I'm just like, is this what I'm naming the episode for you? So I don't have to ask you at 5 a.m.
Okay. Yeah, the Lake Worth Monster of Greer Island. Or more fun, I think, is just to call it Fort Worth's answer to Bigfoot. Because everybody wants their own cool thing that people talk about and have festivals about.
I am curious if this creature is bigger than Bigfoot, since everything's bigger in Texas. I guess we'll have to wait.
I don't think so, but apparently there are stories of a creature that have been seen in that area. And they're common and the idea of it or story of it has been told, over the years. It's not something
it's a tale as old as time.
It's a tale as old as time. But people don't necessarily talk about it all the time. We don't get a lot of reports of, oh my gosh, I saw this. It's more like, oh man, yeah, dude, I remember when that happened. Because people around still remember these events, which is kind of cool. But it started in 1969.
Nice.
There is only one picture of this thing, and I sent it to you. The only picture that exists. I mean, it's on the internet, so it's everywhere, but it's like the only photo of this thing that's ever been taken.
You just see the same photo over
right.
and over. Gotcha.
So in 1969, this photo was taken that was kind of like cold, hard proof that it existed, you know, even though we all know, you know, photos aren't
cold, hard proof at all.
So Alan Plaster snapped this photo of this creature in 1969 of what looks to be a large woolen creature. And he was driving past a place called the Nature Center when he took it. And I looked up this Nature Center, and I'm going to assume he meant the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge because I couldn't really find anything else. That's probably the place he's talking about. And that place is kind of just like shoreline, prairie lands, wetlands. It's just a whole nature area, right? And, well, obviously you don't know, but I'm saying there's lots of trees, walkways, there's lots of grass, and I bet you're just bound to see a lot of animal life there because it's just so open and there's so much space. And God knows I don't go out into the wilderness or into anywhere where there's just camping type things. So
camping, animals. We've discussed how long we think we would last on the television show alone, and I'm convinced Robin would probably quit on the helicopter ride in.
I could do maybe one day.
I don't think you could. I don't think you'd want to sleep there because there's bugs.
Yeah, I seriously, bugs crawling into my ears, one of my biggest fears, and it just freaks me out. There's one season where there's a giant spider that crawls into the tent. No, big nope. Anyway, back to this big monster here. Though Plaster took the picture, even he's kind of skeptical about what he saw. He thinks that what he saw was a hoax or someone playing some type of prank because his logic is that, quote, whatever it was, it wanted to be seen, end quote. And it's something where typical cryptids don't go out of their way.
Right.
Was
it like waving or like hip thrusting and pointing at him? Like, I'm confused.
I don't think he was doing any of those things, but this photograph, you see like almost its entire body. It could be whatever it wants to be.
I just realized, special pro tip for any extraterrestrials or cryptids that listen to our show, if you get caught, just wave and do a bunch of hip thrusts and people are going to be like, yeah, it's a person in a suit, whatever, and just dismiss you out.
Don't give them tips. All right, so that year saw a lot of reports of sightings of this creature or entity or whatever this thing was. And according to a book by Sally Ann Clark titled The Lake Worth Monster of Greer Island, Fort Worth, Texas, it's a self-published book, but a man named Jim Stevens and two others were out on the island looking for the creature. On a hunt for it, if you will.
So did they deliberately went out there to find this thing?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
While they were out there, apparently this large creature landed on Stevens' hood. As with any time something unexpected happens while driving, he swerved his car all over the road. This thing did not let go the entire time. So it's got to be pretty strong if you're swerving.
So it's still on this guy's hood.
So it's still on this guy's hood. That is until he crashed straight into a tree.
So the creature's dead now.
No, it's not dead now, but Stevens reported that he himself was 6'4". So 6 feet 4 inches. That's 193 centimeters approximately. And that's tall. That's really, really tall because you're 6'1" and you're tall, way taller than me.
This is accurate. I am taller than you.
It's just like when I wear heels, it's like, oh, cool, I'm a tall person. And then I take them off. I'm like, oh, no, I'm little again.
It's funny because she wears heels and I'm like barefoot and I'm still taller than her. I'm like, you tried. It's cute that you tried.
But just imagine, this guy's 6'4", and then Stevens claimed that this creature was at least 7 feet tall.
He knows that from it being on his hood. Is he very experienced with people that are 6'4" and taller being on his hood?
It must have, like, when he crashed into the tree, got off, right? Or got tossed off, stood up or something, and maybe he...
Stood up next to, like, a tree that had a bunch of notches.
Maybe he had to get out of his car because he just crashed into a tree, you know? I don't know the specifics of it, but he says that it's at least 7 feet tall.
Gotcha. The
All he
devil's
knows
advocate
is
in
it's
me
huge.
is saying that this guy was drunk and crashed his car, and he's like, I need a story for the insurance and the cops.
Oh, jeez. Other witnesses have claimed to have seen this creature and describe it, and people describe it in different ways. So it's supposedly a long-necked, half-man, half-goat, head of a dog, or head of a goat or a dog, with a horn in the middle of its head. And when I read that, I was just like, that's freaking Gabumon from Digimon.
So that's why.
And
okay.
Because it's just this furry dog creature. He has legs, arms, and he has this horn sticking out of his head. He's super cute. I don't know. That's all I could think of this thing being after I read that. But it's also described that it has fur and scales, which is strange. Because I don't know anything that has fur and scales. Do you? I'm trying to think of something.
Not off the top of my
head.
Not
off the top of my head.
It is quite late. There could be like an entire species of dogfish that I have forgotten about. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about those.
There's got to be I'm sure there is a creature out there that has both. I don't know what it is, and if it is, somebody let us know. But it does sound like a lot of other cryptid sightings where everybody kind of has their own idea of what it looks like, and it kind of piles on top of each other to become this crazy looking creature, and the stories kind of grow on top of each other and become this huge thing that you just are like, what? How did this happen? They just vary so much because people see different things, especially if you're seeing them in different times of day or in different situations. And, and this thing also has long clawed fingers, which also reminds me of Gabumon.
Wow. Interesting stuff.
This thing's a fucking Digimon. Okay. No, I'm just going to go down this rabbit hole of like, that's why you don't see it, because it's back in the digital world.
I would also like to point out that I cannot speculate because I have never seen Digimon. Like, I have no idea what Digimon even is aside from a Pokemon ripoff. I don't know what the creatures are named. I don't know the specifics of the game. I don't know the rules of the world of Digimon, so that's all you, dog.
Okay. Cool. I grew up on Digimon. After school, we would not run home. We'd have to drive home because I lived in bumfuck nowhere. But at like 3:30 is when Digimon would be on. And so we would sit down, we'd watch Digimon. I don't know. Anyway, I watched Pokemon too, okay? My parents bought me all the VHS tapes. But that's not what we're talking about here. All right. So Alan Plaster, the guy who took that infamous photo of this creature, described it as a man-sized, quote-unquote, white furball. And that is what it looks like in that photo. It looks like this giant, furry, white creature. And I would totally name it like Snowball or something. Or it looks like a Yeti, you know? It's big and white. One such sighting of this creature had reports from a man named Tommy Burson. And this report said that this thing landed on his car after having jumped out of a tree. It then made an 18-inch gouge up the side of his car.
Jesus.
And when he showed the police what had happened to his car, they finally started taking it seriously because these people were so scared of what had happened to them. And when people are that scared, you're like, we need to do something about it, because obviously it's become a bigger thing than just like, oh man, I saw this, you know? Before this, they kind of just laughed the whole situation off as a hoax, which in this day and age, a lot of people would, because there's no way something like that exists, you know? And then the following night, hijinks continues as a creature assumed to be the same one proceeds to throw a car tire from a hill at a group of about 10 witnesses from maybe like 500 feet away.
That's a long throw.
It's a long throw to throw a freaking tire. And me just rolling a tire from where we're changing it to the back of the car, I'm like, Jesus, is heavy. I can't even imagine.
We are changing it. I hope you heard the air quotes there.
I can't imagine picking this thing up and chucking it 500 feet.
Yeah, that's an inhuman feat. I would also like to point out, this behavior sounds like Bigfoot from a fucking Jack Link's beef jerky commercial.
To me, I was just like, this is like King Kong. It's some King Kong stuff where he's jumping from trees, landing on people's cars, tearing stuff up, chucking shit. It's just, that made me think that maybe it's an escaped gorilla from a local zoo. But I did look up how big gorillas get, and they get to maybe 6 feet, not 7 feet like that guy was saying. And female gorillas are even smaller than that. They get to around 4 feet. So it's kind of like maybe a mutant gorilla or like a super big gorilla or something like that. I don't even know. But today I learned how big gorillas get.
How far can gorillas throw tires is the next question.
I don't know if they're that strong that they could do that.
They're pretty strong.
You think so?
I've arm wrestled so many gorillas, and I almost always lose.
Are you calling me a gorilla?
I've never arm wrestled you, I don't think.
Really? Oh, no, I don't know. I'd probably lose.
You have your arm, so clearly not.
Yeah, you'd rip it right off.
Exactly.
So the photo by Alan Plaster supposedly took place around the time of this throwing incident. Newspapers reported the alleged sightings of this creature in their papers, and they published Plaster's photo, and this kind of led locals to even more so drive out at night and want to check it out and want to see it themselves and experience it. One article written by Terry Deckard was ran in the July 10th edition of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. It was on page 2 this first time round, and it had the headline, quote, "Fishy man goat terrifies couples parked at Lake Worth," end quote. I was like, okay. Where does fish come from? But I guess if people are describing it as a scaly creature, maybe. And then the very next day, it turned into front page news. And so this article on the front page was like, "Police, residents observe but can't identify the monster." So this stuff keeps happening, but they're like, what the fuck is it? And I mean, if you're reading stuff in the newspaper like that, how do you stay away? You're like, I have to check it out now.
I would insist, I shouldn't say I would insist. I speculate that if this headline came across, the first thing I would want to do is go, and the first thing you would want to do is not go, and you'd be like, absolutely not, we're not going.
And then throughout the week, there were obviously more headlines in the newspapers. Headlines like, "Witnesses watch monster cavort," "Lockworth monster reportedly furry, scaly," and "Ghost seen on Greer Island."
Wow. It's a lot of stuff happening.
I don't know where the ghost comes from. Maybe because the creature's white, but...
That could be, yeah.
I mean, those papers be banging. Solid titles of news articles.
Definitely sound like the National Enquirer type headlines.
I know! When I read that, I was like, really, guy? I mean, but this is 1969. Nice. Different type of writing. Oh, fuck. I didn't even think about that.
I've said it twice now.
Yeah, the different type of writing, different content. I'm sure they didn't, write articles the way we do, I guess.
Do you think they spoke a different language?
No.
Or the rules of English have changed since then?
Do
you think they included sound effects like, "Nyah, you see"?
We always have new things in our newspapers constantly, or online news articles people are writing online, all that stuff. I think back in the day, they didn't have Google, they didn't have internet. It's like, what do you got? Just give me whatever you got, and we're just going to put it in the paper. So it sounds like the National Enquirer because people just don't write about that stuff anymore because we have the internet.
And they put taglines, on newspapers to make them sell. That's what it comes down to. If there's a monster that's around, they're going to want to keep working that into more and more sensational titles.
So despite police investigating the claims of all these sightings, they never found any evidence of a creature or a quote-unquote monster in the area. One reporter claimed that the legend was just one that spread via summer campfire stories, where you just tell stories of fake made-up stuff to scare kids, and then it gets told over and over again, and then the kids are like, "Dude, have you heard this story of this creature that lives at the lake," or whatever.
And when kids retell a story, it gets the creature probably got an inch taller each time, or something more sensational, like it had fucking nunchucks. Like, you don't know what a kid's gonna say.
It had a horn growing out of its head. Some think that it was just high school kids doing some pranks for the summer, before they went back to school or whatever. In 1999, a local television station called KDFW aired a lengthy segment about the Lake Worth monster. During this recording, a reporter named Richard Ray interviewed locals about it, including another reporter named Jim Mars and that author, Sally Ann Clark. Unfortunately, Clark's interview did bring up the fact that there were students that had admitted to authorities that they'd worn a gorilla costume and had gone parading around the lake. But her close encounter that she had with this creature goes like this. Quote, "It was not a bobcat, nor was it a sheepskin. It wasn't a person dressed in a Halloween costume. It was really the terrorizing monster. It stood on its hind feet and ran like a man. It had white hair over most of its body and scales, too. It was a goatfish man. I'm sure it stood about 6 feet and 9 inches tall and was undressed. It didn't have any clothes on. It looked like it weighed 250 or 260 pounds. It was the most pathetic sound I have ever heard." And I'm going to try to make these sounds that she wrote, okay?
Interesting. I like this segment.
It went grr, burr, yeep, you.
Yeet.
Yeet. And sounded almost as if it would cry any minute from the great pain it was in, end quote. I don't know how to read those sounds she wrote, because to me those sounds don't mean pain,
Yeah, yeet's when you throw something, I'm pretty sure.
It didn't say yeet, obviously.
So I am curious. So high school kids admitted to wearing a costume and parading around the island.
But they said gorilla costume, where everyone's seeing this white thing.
What? Yeah, and it's definitely white in the pictures. I just totally looked at it. And did they do this at the same time the sightings were coming in? Or were they saying, like, yeah, we've done that before, and it wasn't like the timelines didn't match up? I'm curious about that. I'm
very curious, too. I think it's just like that summer they did that.
Gotcha.
And people were saying, like, kids used to go to that area all the time and party, have keg parties, do all that stuff. So Clark also cited reports of sheep being horribly mangled. So you guys can skip forward like 30 seconds if you want to miss the sheep mangling. But they had their necks and heads crushed. Their chins were laying in the middle of their backs. It looked like something had just ripped them apart. And that's hard to explain. Like, why would that happen?
Right.
In 2005, a reporter at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram received an anonymous letter from someone claiming to be one of the 3 high school kids who did that in the summer of 69.
Killed the sheep or dressed up like the creature?
Dressed up like the creature and was one of the people that pranked everyone.
Gotcha.
Summer of 69 is a song, right?
Yeah. It was the summer of 69.
Who does that song?
I have no idea.
That's the only line I know from that song, so it doesn't matter.
That's the only line anyone knows.
Anyway, that summer, these kids, in the letter they wrote, these kids, quote, decided to go out to Lake Worth and scare people, end quote. And in this letter also, they kind of describe, like, we went out there, we did it, then we went to Dairy Queen after, I had this, the monster had this, because whoever their friend was that dressed up or whatever, I don't know. But they also used a tinfoil mask, like they made a mask out of tinfoil, which
doesn't match the picture.
It doesn't match the picture, but not a lot of people were like, it had a shiny face, or its face was glow. You know what I mean? They all described this.
It might be fish scales, though. That might be what people thought they saw.
Oh, that makes sense. But why would the fish scales be so shiny? I don't know. It's pretty shiny. It's pretty interesting. A lot of people see different things, and describe seeing different things. It's like that test where you ask someone, like, what did you see?
The Rorschach test?
And no.
The ink blots?
No, but it's like someone stole a purse or whatever, right? And then the professor asks, like, what did you look like?
Oh,
and
yeah.
And everybody describes the person completely differently. And so, who knows? Everyone sounds like they just saw all these different things, and it makes sense when you have these kids out there doing pranks, and it's hard to tell which one's real and which one's not, you know? But these costumes these kids were wearing don't seem to match up with the fact that this thing is a giant white thing. In 2009, Fort Worth, Texas magazine published a report about an unidentified man who reported having been the one that threw the car tire that year. And supposedly they rolled it and it hit something and then it bounced, and that's why it looked like they threw it. I don't know. But I don't know how I feel about it being quote-unquote an unidentified man, because
anyone could claim that it was them.
Right.
Yeah, anyone could be like, oh yeah, it's totally me.
It's just something that I don't trust. A guy named Craig Woolheater, blogger by day, cryptozoologist by night, or just a cryptozoologist blogger. I wanted to spice up his resume. I don't know. He thinks that this Lake Worth monster is just some, quote, undiscovered, uncatalogued primate species that walked on two legs, end quote. That's just the description of Bigfoot to me. It's like, so it's a Bigfoot. I got it. And they just made me laugh. I was like, really, guy? Like,
nailed it. He just copied and pasted that shit.
Though some say that it was a bobcat, some say that it was an ape that was horribly burned in a circus fire.
I just love, I
it's
fucking love people's stories to figure out
people's stories are great.
Why it looks the way it does.
Some people say
it was cursed by an ancient Sumerian god.
Some people say it was an alien from outer space. It's just, people have all these different ideas of what they want it to be, or what
they want to believe.
They do want to believe. But we'll never really know what it really was. And why, you know, that, I mean, all those pranksters that were like, yo, it was me. Who knows if they actually did it, or if it's some huge conspiracy.
It is frustrating to know that we'll never know, because we also know that the truth
is out there. Wayne Clark, no relation to Sally Clark. She has an E in her name. He does not. Wayne Clark is the director of the Nature Center and says that though there's no recent sightings, there's no proof that the monster doesn't exist, and they still hear strange noises.
Yeet.
Yeep. Fun thing that you can check out is that the Fort Worth Nature Center and Refuge has a Lake Worth Monster Bash every October. Obviously not this October. But they do it for the usual normal years. And these days, the area is filled with a lot of hairy creatures. And by hairy creatures, I mean they have a herd of 18 buffalo that wander the area.
That's awesome.
So maybe it was a buffalo. Who knows?
A buffalo standing upright and covered in white fur.
And, well, what do buffalo sound like?
I don't know.
I don't know. I should have looked that up. Oh.
I imagine something like...
Like a cow?
Yeah, like a cow that's just like... Meh.
Maybe, I don't know. But
these are my fucking 4 a.m. sound effects, folks. I hope you're enjoying them.
maybe it was buffalo that they heard, but who knows? I don't know when they acquired these 18 buffalo, but
they just showed up. And
they just showed up.
We're gonna hang out
hey,
here now.
What up, guys? But yeah, so that is the Lake Worth monster.
Right on. That was really good. I am very curious because we have a lot of people who listen from Texas. If anyone's ever heard of the creature or knows someone who possibly has heard of like these sightings, or maybe has actually seen the creature themselves. So pretty good stuff, Robin.
Thanks.
Way to touch a cryptid on episode 150.
It was fun. I love doing cryptids. I think they're cute, and I don't know, I enjoy doing them.
Nice. You're good at them too. So good
Thanks.
stuff. All right. So before we move into our next topic, we are going to take a quick commercial break. And I'm going to be the person that's actually doing the first ad, because we have been sponsored by a product known as Manscaped. And you might have heard me talk about this on the show before, because I have actually purchased products from Manscaped in the past, which was, it just made it all the more fun that they reached out to us and said, hey, would you like us to send you some free products and possibly have a discount code? And we said, abso-freaking-lutely. So they sent us some products. They sent us like underwear, t-shirts, and of course a product known as the lawnmower, which is used to trim and groom your nether regions, which is,
you can do it for other things too, not just your nether regions. Like,
it's specifically designed for that, but like Robin said, use it on whatever you want. I just bring that up because it's designed to be very careful around sensitive skin, because as we all know, our downstairs parts are quite sensitive, and if you want to go hacking and slashing down there, you want a product that'll help you. And I can say,
that's why I take a chainsaw.
Having used this thing for like 6 months, because I've owned it for a while, I absolutely friggin' love it. And to show Robin how much I loved it when I first got it, I was like, look at how nice it is. And I was like, just trimming patches into my arm hair, and they were totally like permanent. Like, I was like, oh crap, I forgot I just took that hair off just to show her what it looks like. So I was like going to work and never rolling up my sleeves so people wouldn't know. But
is there still a bald patch?
No, there's not. It grew back in.
Oh, okay. I know it's called Manscaped, but anybody can use it. Doesn't matter where you want to use it. I seriously, my underarms get pretty bad, and
it looks like she has rabbis and headlocks. It does. I admire it a little bit.
But they're pretty useful. I think you can use it for whatever you want. It's pretty cool.
So whether or not you want to use one for yourself or you want to give one as a gift, because now is a good time to start thinking about purchasing gifts, we have a wonderful discount code, code Scaryish, all caps, SCARYISH. In case you've never noticed the name of the show, that's what it is. It'll get you 20% off and free shipping, which is a pretty sweet deal. All you need to do is go to manscaped.com and check out their products, and whatever you pick up, you can get that discount by using discount code Scaryish. So we hope you folks do that. That is the end of this ad. And we are back. So this week, it is the final week of Extraterrestrial October, and one of the nicer things about doing this month in particular was knowing exactly which topic I was going to cover for the last 3 weeks of the month, because like we mentioned earlier, as of this week, we've covered over 300 topics, which is quite a few topics. And this particular one that I'm going to cover tonight is one that I found a really, really long time ago. I mentioned previously that there is a documentary currently being made for this particular topic. It's actually in post-production at this point, which means they've got done with principal filming and they're just doing editing and everything that comes after the fact. And I'm really excited to get to that. I'm going to try and get someone from that documentary on the show. I don't know if it'll happen, but I didn't want to keep saving this topic because it's so friggin' interesting forever, especially since this is Extraterrestrial October, and I felt it was the perfect one to end the month on. So without further ado, I will now tell you the tale of the Ariel school encounter. So this incident is one of the most bizarre occurrences that I have discovered in the time I've been looking up topics for Scaryish. One reason is based off of what was seen all those years ago. The encounter itself is just bizarre. And then another reason is just how many individuals witnessed this particular event. So the incident in question took place on September 14th, 1994. Y'all remember 1994, right? I'm not sure, but I don't think I've actually covered 1994 yet based off of my search history. So anyways, y'all remember 1994, right? Gas cost $1.08 a gallon. The average house cost $120,000, and the average cost of a car was $12,350. South Africa had a free election that included multiple races for the first time since apartheid ended, and Nelson Mandela won. Shout out to Nelson Mandela. And speaking of monumental historical moments, Nancy Kerrigan got fucking kneecapped by Tonya Harding's ex-husband. That shit was crazy. I was 9 years old, and I totally remember it all going down. Nancy Kerrigan recovered and won the silver, but no one was beating the blonde Ukrainian she-devil, Oksana Bayul, that year. Movies included Shawshank Redemption, Forrest Gump, True Lies, The Santa Claus with Tim Allen, Speed, The Mask, Pulp Fiction, and Dumb and Dumber, which is to basically say movies fucking ruled.
The only one that matters is True Lies.
I mean, Speed is in there.
Yeah, Speed is so good too.
Good, dude. Like every single one of those are so good. But yeah, so that was 1994. But you know what else happened? Some crazy shit over in Zimbabwe. Yes, Zimbabwe. And for those of you who don't know, Zimbabwe is a country in the southernmost part of Africa. Well, almost the southernmost part, because there are a couple countries that are below Zimbabwe that actually run into the ocean, while Zimbabwe itself is landlocked. So in Zimbabwe, there is a small town named Ruwa, R-U-W-A. It's apparently been growing recently, pretty rapidly, in fact. And according to its small Wikipedia page, it's doing fairly well. I don't know exactly what that entails, but within this wonderful small town was, or is, it's unclear, a private elementary school known as the Ariel School. And yes, Ariel is spelled the same way as the mermaid.
So they just taught a bunch of mermaids there.
Yeah, that's exactly what they did. They taught you how to live up there. This school had around 110 human beings present when accounting for both staff and children. And on the morning of September 14th, 1994, the children at the school were released onto the grounds for what in America is known as recess.
I'm sure that's what they call it there, right?
I don't know. I don't know if that's a regional thing or if that's like a colloquial thing, but I know it as recess. So as a child, I thought that recess was so I could go have fun in between learning sessions because learning is boring. As an adult, I know it's so that children, who are essentially tiny psychopaths, can go run around and scream and burn off the excess energy that makes them unbearable little monsters. It also grants the teachers a brief reprieve from said tiny little monsters, which is the true recipient of recess, the teacher. They're getting a break. During this particular break, the children ran around and played on a 91-degree day. So this is like 10 a.m. and it's already 91 degrees. And then something very odd happened, according to 62 children outside that day. It was 62 children, I believe, that were outside. I don't know if every single one of them saw this, but an incredibly large number of them did see this. So the children claimed that they saw 3 silver orbs in the sky above the school. And what happened was, like, a few children wound up noticing these things in the sky, and then basically a bunch of kids started looking upwards and seeing what was going on up there. And these orbs would flash red before disappearing out of the sky with a bright flash of light. So it'd be like red, 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 bam, and then they would disappear but appear back in a different spot in the sky still above the school. And they did this at least 3 additional times after they saw it the first time, and then they slowly began to descend towards the school. This has got to be terrifying if you're a kid out during recess seeing this happen. They all came very, very low, but one of the objects descended all the way to the ground, landing roughly 300 yards from where the kids were.
So they actually saw it land.
They saw it land. The kids' view of the object was obscured, so they couldn't quite tell if it landed all the way on the ground or just sort of hovered right above the ground. But I'd like to think that if it did hover, it would have like a ramp slowly roll out rather than roll out quickly. That's something I learned from Rick and Morty to impress people.
Oh my God.
According to what I was able to find, the area that the UFO quote-unquote landed was a spot that, while was not fenced off, was a spot kids were not allowed to go. There was a lot of overgrown foliage, and they were saying that there were poisonous snakes and spiders that would be there. And it kind of felt like, oh, this is like Harry Potter's Forbidden Forest. You know, it's like, yeah, you're just not allowed to go in there. It's right next to the school grounds. It's actually right next to your playground, but don't go there. Bad things live there. Side note, if this is 1994, that would have been Harry Potter's 4th year, which I'm pretty sure is the Goblet of Fire.
I'm pretty sure when I was in middle school, there was an area of the playground that they were like, don't go over there, because it just had fuckloads of scorpions in it.
Yeah, for me, it was like we had a fence. It was like a 3-foot fence, and on the other side was a farm. So, like, don't chase the sheep. And every now and then someone would, and they get suspended. But then once we got to middle school, I was like, no more recess. Which is the worst part.
You had no recess in middle school?
No, we had gym. That's it. It was like, you have gym, you have no recess. Elementary school got recess. After that, we were done. After 5th grade, we had no recess.
Even in high school, we had recess.
You had recess?
Yeah, we had recess. We had lunch and long lunch break. And
we never had recess. Our lunch break was like 30, 40 minutes right around there.
I'm pretty sure we got like a 15 or 30-minute break somewhere in there.
Yeah, we didn't have recess. That's weird. I've never heard of like high schools having recess. So anyways, this thing descends. These kids are freaking out. The age range for kids on the playground is around 6 to 12. And at this point, they're scared. And in fact, I think it's fairly safe to say that there were some peed pants on the playground that day. And then a small bipedal creature between 3 and 4 feet tall emerged from the Forbidden Forest, clad in black. It was wearing a shiny suit that fit it tightly, And the descriptions also stated that it had a, quote, scrawny neck and a narrow face, thin legs and arms, and long black hair. And then the last detail, quote, huge eyes like rugby balls. It moved around in the foliage kind of like it was exploring before a second figure wound up appearing. And then the first figure started to notice that kids were there and they were watching. And then it started to almost inadvertently approach the kids as if it was still exploring the foliage, but just getting closer. So this is when the teachers noticed screaming coming from outside. And I believe at this point, they likely thought it was just normal kid screams, but it does seem odd that there weren't any chaperones there at all. And as a side note, I wrote that and then went back as I started writing more and more in my script. And this is the exact assumption the teachers stated and admitted to when the incident got investigated to having when they heard screaming coming from outside when this incident happened. There's like, oh yeah, it's just kids, whatever. They're actually having like a full staff meeting inside while this recess was occurring. They thought the aliens, the kids, thought these aliens were actually demons. And the younger kids, almost all of the younger kids said, fudge this, and ran inside. The older kids stayed outside. Whether it was they were trying to prove something or they were just very curious or they were frozen in fear, I do not know. But the little kids ran. So the first creature, at this point when the kids were screaming and running away, also left. And they said he didn't like wander away. He kind of just like phase shifted and then was suddenly back creepy. By the ship. And they're like, okay, that's terrifying. And I guess that whatever the creature was, it was most likely a teacher on its home planet. And it recognized children and was like, nope, I'm not dealing with this shit on my vacation. So the small kids ran inside and they started to freak out because they couldn't find any teachers. It's like, had they all ran away? Were they all abducted? Had they never been there in the first place? Like, no, it's just a full faculty meeting. And it was the 90s. It's like, only the strong survived recess in the 90s. They were able to find one adult in the hallway, and they all swarmed and started freaking out, telling her what they had seen. And she did not abandon her post. Regardless of whatever accounts they were giving, she was going to stay and guard the snack bar, because it said that the snack bar had inventory such as candy and soda, which she was not willing to walk away from. You can't abandon stuff like that simply for a possible threat to children. Like, honestly, I probably would have personally thought that it was a big lie to lure me away from the booth so that they could just raid the candy and the soda.
I mean, that's a good assumption.
It's a good assumption, but when you hear screaming and all these kids are terrified, you might want to check it out. As a side note, when this incident was investigated later, the staff reluctantly admitted there were no chaperones present during morning recess. Just like I had said, they're like, we're going to have our meeting, so we're just going to let the kids go outside. No one's going to watch them. It's prison rules out there. It's the 90s. Only the strong survived recess. That's what it came down to. It really did. The students outside stated that these beings then communicated with them via their, quote, horrible eyes. So they talked through their eyes to the kids, which if you're a kid may be how you describe like a telepathic communication. Just saying.
I was going to say, like, how do they communicate through their eyes?
Like if you made eye contact with these things, you could hear their voice in your head.
Yeah.
This event, from the crafts being spotted in the sky to the creatures speaking to them through their eyes, and then they left, lasted between 5 and 10 minutes.
So no time at all, really.
Yeah, 5 and 10 minutes. I mean, it's an eternity if you're a kid outside. If you're inside and you're an adult in a really boring-ass staff meeting, it's like, oh, yeah, we had no idea. So the question you might be asking is, what did these creatures say? So here's an account from a 10-year-old child when they were asked what was said. And they said, quote, he was just staring. He was scary. We were trying not to look at him because he was scary. My eyes and feelings went with him. That last part is so creepy, dude.
So they took a part of you with them?
My eyes and feelings went with him. Before I tell you this next account, okay, I would like to mention, again, this took place in 1994. And the account you are about to hear came in 1994. It came when that happened from a student who went under the alias of Elsa. This was a kid who was at most 12 years old. I mention these things because, one, who knew what a relevant pseudonym that would be nowadays thanks to Frozen? And two, This was not a political issue at the time. When asked about the communication, she claimed that she felt horrible for the rest of the day due to the awful images that had been implanted in her brain. When asked what the images were and what they meant, she said, quote, "The world is going to end. Maybe because we don't look after our planet or the air. Like all the trees will go down and there will be no air. People will be dying. Those thoughts came from the man's eyes."
Wow.
That is, I'm fucking covered in goosebumps right now.
He's not even lying.
Like, it's so fucking creepy. This, like, global warming wasn't a thing that had been talked about yet. Like, it hadn't been brought up.
Yeah.
And accounts from students that stayed outside and saw this thing echo this sentiment. Kids that did not want to elaborate on their experience said things that they felt when looking at the creature included, quote, "We're hurting our planet," and, quote, "Something is going to happen. We need to be careful of our technology." Like, these are such weird things for children to say.
And for them to convey via their eyes?
Yeah. Like, naturally, people thought, what a load of shit. All these kids must be lying. And then the kids went home, you know? They went home, and then guess what happens when your kids go home? They tell their parents. And the parents found out, and the calls just started pouring in. Calls like, why did my kid have a close encounter at school? And why is my kid now physically and mentally affected by what happened to him on the during recess? And it didn't take long at all. And some sources I found said, like, the next day, that an investigative journalist in the area named Cynthia Hind, or Hind, Hind, was reaching out regarding this incident, calling the headmaster at the school, asking what she could do to interview or figure out exactly what was going on. I found other reports that evening there was an unexpected meteor shower in the sky seen by everyone in the area.
A very strange coincidence.
And that a bunch of people that were watching the sky had these really horrible, ominous feelings that lasted until the next day. So this is a really weird day. The next day happens. Cynthia hits up the school like, hey, I really want to know what's going on here. She requested to the headmaster that the kids who experienced this draw pictures of what they saw. So they did. They went to the kids and said, hey, about what happened yesterday, draw what you saw. Now, a lot of these are going to be on our Instagram/Facebook page, okay? There were 35 in total that were drawn. And what is incredibly surprising about them now, and especially then, is how similar these things were. These kids of varying ages and varying talent of what you could draw drew the aliens and the spacecraft extremely similarly. So even if, like, you didn't know how to draw a spaceship and someone said, like, draw what you saw, and, like, if you're playing devil's advocate and you're like, all these kids are full of shit.
Did they draw in the same room?
No, they took them individually and had them all draw, and this is what came out of it. And they were all super, super similar. So at this point, someone reaches out to, I think it's Cynthia. Cynthia reaches out to John E. Mack. Dr. John E. Mack. He is a renowned American psychiatrist, a writer, a professor, and the head of the Department of Psychiatry at a little place called Harvard Medical School.
Dang.
He's also a Pulitzer Prize winner. So he is incredibly impressive as a human being. And Mac was actually in the area. He was in the southern part of Africa when this took place, and he wound up heading over there. And he had been doing work for the past few years on individuals from a psychological perspective, individuals who had experienced alien encounters or what they thought were alien encounters. So he had experience on this. He also had a ton of experience with child psychology, so it made him like the perfect guy to be there, like the right guy at the right time. When he arrived, he requested permission to speak to the children. He was given permission to speak to 12 of the children who were present during this incident.
Why only 12?
The rest of them were like, we don't want to talk about it, or the parents were like, don't you fucking dare talk to my kid, you know? He also spoke with the parents of the kids who he was allowed to speak to and the faculty who were there that day. And like I mentioned, Mac was experienced with child psychiatry, and it came in handy because he immediately recognized that the kids were legitimately traumatized by whatever had taken place. Like, he mentioned the fact that they were still scared. They had been sincerely affected by what they had seen. So at this point, I'm going to pause and say, yeah, I didn't at the beginning of this, give a disclaimer that this could all be bullshit. And it could. Realistically, it could. But it would have to be a spontaneous lying event coordinated between 62 children in the course of 5 to 10 minutes that resulted with actual trauma in 100% of the kids that were spoken to by a highly regarded, Pulitzer Prize winning Harvard department head. And that would have to be the person that they fooled and all the shit that they combined to just sort of stick with and then somehow come up with a description of the alien and the spacecraft all at once. So not only were these kids traumatized, they were scared of two things in particular. One, that people would not believe them. People weren't going to believe what they told them. And two, they were going to get picked on for talking about what happened. So basically the two things that everyone actually worries about if you were to experience an event like this. Of the 12 children Max spoke to, all 12 had consistent and reliable accounts of what happened. They were details that were super specific. He interviewed them each individually. And you don't corroborate a story so well that a professional psychiatrist can't find holes in it. He went through this meticulously. And after these interviews and speaking with the staff and speaking with the parents, this dude, the Harvard Medical School head of psychiatry, stated he was convinced this was not a case of mass hysteria. For all intents and purposes, what had taken place was legitimate, and because there's no other explanation, this could possibly be a legitimate encounter with some sort of alien species. And I would now like to pause to bring up the irony that 2 hours ago, Robin asked me what the plot of the movie The Day the Earth Stood Still was. And I told her, oh, it's, about the Earth not being sustainable anymore and the alien lands. And he basically says, you're fucking up the planet. Please stop fucking up the planet or we'll kill all of you. So it's kind of like this, just a little bit different. The threat's not there.
That's terrifying that I literally brought that up before this.
And I was reading through it. I was oh, yeah, it's this. It's the thing I'm reading right now. Except it was I'm just going to communicate with you through my giant fucking eyes and terrify all the kids and then leave,
Not everyone can be as hot as Keanu Reeves.
Wow. He's from the newer one, which isn't nearly as good as the old one.
Really?
The old one's from 1951. I watched it in high school and I still absolutely love that movie. Also, it has Klata, Baratu, Nikto, which is from Army of Darkness, which you still haven't seen yet. So they take the word, whatever. I'm going to keep going. So it's not shocking that despite the report that came from Dr. John Mack, that news of this event was widely regarded with skepticism and outright dismissal because they were kids. No one believes kids.
And that happens all the time.
It absolutely does. Kids have open minds, so they'll tell you the things that they've seen without bias. And once those things were filtered through people, it just became the kids are full of shit. The kids are lying. It's just mass hysteria. So when folks began to point out the evidence in the case, people kept coming back to, it's just a case of mass hysteria. And it's kind of annoying. There's a man named Robert Schaefer who claims, quote, "The bottom line is that there is no evidence. We don't know what pressure may have been placed on children to tell the stories the way they did." So what's so interesting about that perspective is you'd have to ignore that the only evidence that would be able to be collected from an event like this are eyewitness accounts and evaluations performed, hopefully by a professional, which is exactly what got ignored, so that people could just say, there's no evidence, so we're just going to dismiss it outright. Because skeptics in this case believe that without tangible, on-your-dick proof, everything gets dismissed, and it is so annoying what bad science that is to actually dismiss something. It's not shocking, considering Schaefer is a 32-year veteran of the, quote, Committee for Skeptical Inquiry.
Is it really?
Yeah, 100%. You can be part of a committee for skeptical inquiry, or you can do actual studies of experiences, like Dr. Mack did. That was his fucking job. When you go into a situation to evaluate what happened, you're doing things right. You want to know exactly what happened, and you take things step by step. It doesn't hold any credibility whatsoever if you walk into a situation with a badge that says skeptic on it and state, well, I didn't find any proof, so it's fake. Also, I'm going to ignore the psychological profiling done by an actual professional and continue to say it's fake. Skeptics need to try harder because this is lazy. It's absolutely lazy to just dismiss stuff outright because it's well, I didn't find anything, therefore everyone must be lying or everyone must be crazy together. The documentary that I referenced at the beginning of this episode, or I'm sorry, at the beginning of my topic, is known as the Ariel School Phenomenon. And it covers this incident, not just then, with what I've told you, but also now. Because unfortunately, Dr. Mack was killed in a car accident 10 years after this incident, almost to the day. He was actually struck by a drunk driver.
Wow.
And he died. And he dedicated like the last 15 years of his life, amongst other things that he did, to the study of alien encounters and the psychology behind people. And he started to realize more and more, like, these people aren't lying, these people aren't crazy, these people are traumatized. And he's pretty amazing. He absolutely is. The director, named Randall Nickerson, is following in his footsteps while also going a step beyond that, because he's interviewing the eyewitnesses of the event now, 26 years later. Like, these kids range from 6 to 12, which means they're ranging from like 32 to 40 now. And it's not surprising to hear that the event left a lasting impression on some of these people. And Nickerson had one such eyewitness with him when he didn't ask me anything 3 years ago, in October of 2017, because he's been working on this documentary for a really, really long time. And the site that hosted the AMA, which stands for Ask Me Anything, is known as Reddit, which is a bastion of civility and respect between its members, and cordial discourse is often found here.
That sounds like bullshit.
It's absolute bullshit. One of the students was named Salma, S-A-L-M-A, and Salma was with him when they started the AMA and answered questions from the community specifically about this event. And I joke about Reddit, but most of what was asked actually seemed to be really respectful, or it was
cool.
Just moderated super well. Folks asked questions regarding Salma's recollection of the event and whether the time that has passed or the resulting attention from the event caused her to have like slight adjustments or things that are fuzzy or what is called false memories. And her answer to that is, quote, "Thanks for bringing up this theory. Sure, I'm not perfect. Memory is fallible, but I do remember it quite vividly as best as possible." It's like, this is
That's
traumatizing event, man. Like, it's something you're going to remember. Someone asked if what she had seen was similar to a classic gray alien and actually provided a picture of what is known as like one of the grays. So if you ever seen a picture of the Greys, they're just like the small spacemen that you've always seen on stuff like Unsolved Mysteries, or when they had the alien autopsy thing, that was supposed to be a Grey. Her response was this, quote, "Somewhat similar. As the picture is black and white, it's hard to say exactly how similar. I can't really compare skin tones and height, as it's hard to say in this picture." So it's not someone that's like, absolutely, that's exactly what I saw. She's just like, yeah, I guess kind of somewhat. Like, it looks like it.
Very political answer.
But realistically, I can't tell. Like, this is a black and white picture. I can't tell height. Like, she's just being very real about this. And lots of people asked what the purpose of their mission was, or what she thinks the purpose of their mission was. And I'm paraphrasing a bunch of her answers together. She basically came out with like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. So
you can't know really for sure. They're freaking aliens.
Yeah, you have no idea, you know. And she comes back with, "I don't know why they were there. I have no idea." But the documentary Ariel School Phenomenon is currently listed as coming soon at the beginning of the year. I reached out to them actually and said like, "Hey, I'm really interested in covering this topic. If anyone wants to come on the show and like speak with me about it, I think that'd be amazing." They got back to me right away and said that they're incredibly busy trying to finish the movie, and that once they get closer to actually releasing it, they would reach back out and see if there was something we could arrange, which was super awesome. They got back to me in like 2 hours, which just doesn't happen. So obviously things are a bit crazy nowadays, and I think we all know the mess that is release dates nowadays with COVID-19. So I cannot begin to imagine the hell they're going through just trying to get something ready to like release in a normal time, especially now during COVID-19. I'm going to see what I can do to try and get someone from the documentary on the show. But we shall see what happens with that, because I know everyone's schedules are incredibly busy and we're all limited by travel and technology at this point. So who knows if that'll happen. I think what I can say with any sort of certainty on this particular incident is that I am certain I have no idea what happened back in 1994. I do feel fairly confident something did happen. I don't think these kids made this shit up. I don't think it's a case of mass hysteria where a bunch of kids all of a sudden were absolutely traumatized by an event that didn't actually take place. And the only people that really do know what happened those days are the kids that were there, who are at this point full-fledged adults. You know, they're my age or they're older than me. which is why I'm incredibly excited for this documentary to come out. And like so many folks who have sent their stories to the show, sometimes growing up makes you doubt what you've experienced. So I'm really interested to see if people who gave eyewitness accounts back then doubt it now, because we also get a lot of emails where when you grow up, rather than it making you doubt things, it kind of reinforces that you experienced something.
Yeah.
Like you really start to realize, like, no, I remember that vividly. Like you go back and you start to go through your memory, like, I remember what it looked like, what it sounded like, what it smelled like all the details that you kind of don't think about until you learn to kind of pick apart your memories start flooding back to you. So I'm really, really curious as to how this whole thing is going to shake out. But like I said, I don't know. I absolutely don't. So I hope I told the story fairly well. Again, check out our Instagram and our Facebook if you want to see some of these pictures. But for now, that is the Ariel school encounter.
Nice. Thank you.
Hope you enjoyed that.
Aliens freak me out.
Hope you enjoyed the extraterrestrial October. This one in particular, where it's like, it communicated through its eyes. It said something before it was ever like a political topic, or even in the scope of politics, or even in the scope of like world conversation that is so relevant right now. It's terrifying.
The world's gonna end if we don't take care of our own planet thing, I think is, I mean, that has been going on for a while. Captain Planet, all that fun stuff.
I mean, we always knew like, hey, you should take care of the planet, but like never the message was never that serious. And like when I read the thing about like the trees are gonna go away, I'm like, well, in 2020, like, so much of the Amazon burned down this year. It's like,
shit.
And then the random spot where it's like, people
the
are
wildfires in Australia too.
And it's like, people are gonna die. It's like, there's a fucking pandemic right now. Like, this shit's really fucking creepy, man. And the fact that these kids like are saying like, this is what the creature told me, and all of them are like, its eyes were horrible. Like, they were so scared of this thing's eyes. It's just like one of those things that's totally going to give me nightmares, like without a doubt. So I hope you all enjoyed that, and I hope you all share in the nightmares, because I don't want it to be just me.
Okay.
So, all right, that's everything I have for my topic. If you have a spooky story, spooky, supernatural, true crime, extraterrestrial in nature, or maybe coincidental where something actually didn't happen, but you were really scared about it and it turns out everything was okay, we absolutely want to hear those stories, and we would love to share them on the show. So please email storytime@scaryish.com or go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us. It'll bring you to a form. If you fill it out, it comes directly to us, and we see it, and a lot of people send in their stories that way. You can also go to facebook.com/Scaryish podcast and message us if you want to send us your story that way. We also post we have a post for each episode that will have like 8 or 9 pictures that go along with our topics. The other place you can reach out to us is Instagram, which is @Scaryish podcast. Likewise, we put a post up that has pictures that accompany the episodes. And Twitter. We have a Twitter, and it's @ScarishPod, so feel free to hit us up there. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
You can go to patreon.com/Scaryish podcast, and those are monthly donations. There's a few different tiers. Tiers start at $1, and with $1, you get ad-free episodes. It's kind of great. And then right now, I have Wendigo keychains for those that want to join our Badge of Honor tier and above, and I think they're really cute. I like them, and I do send out like periodic stickers and stuff like that too, so that's kind of cool. And then if you go to ko-fi.com, /Scaryish podcast, that's one-time donations, and if you don't like the whole monthly system thing, and all your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup, kind of give us more time to make more content, keep us going. And if you've been with us from the beginning, you've noticed like the audio is a lot different because we've been able to get new microphones. This next thing I think we're going for is another new microphone to kind of make it so our audio's more even, because we have 2 completely different microphones right now. But yeah, thank you everybody so much for supporting us, even if it's just sharing it with your friends and making your coworkers listen to it, or forcing your loved ones to listen to it in the car with you. You guys are absolutely awesome.
Yeah, we appreciate all the support we get. You folks have been incredible, and we feel it every single day. So thank you so much one last time. I think that's everything for episode 150. So I guess, Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye-bye.